Have you ever wondered what's really hiding out there in the dark woods of Massachusetts? I mean, if you just go by the local legends, it's this terrifying mix of giant, glowing-eyed beasts, ancient curses, and totally unexplained phenomena. But when you look a little closer, the truth hiding right beneath these ghost stories is actually far more compelling and in a lot of ways much, much darker. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking Massachusetts myths, from cryptids to colonial trauma. We're going to dive deep into the state's absolute most famous paranormal lore and uncover the really profound and often completely overlooked history that's sitting right beneath the surface. So let's jump right in. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll explore the Bridgewater Triangle phenomenon, then look at some cryptids of the Bay State, before shifting over to true crime and satanic panics. From there, we'll ground ourselves in the real history of colonial war, talk about the Pukwudgie problem, and finally wrap it all up with myths, land, and memory.
Starting us off, Section 1, the Bridgewater Triangle phenomenon.
So, picture this. It's 1983, and a cryptozoologist named Lauren Coleman publishes a book that officially puts this 200-square-mile area in southeastern Massachusetts on the map. Literally. It's anchored by Abington up north, Freetown down to the southeast, and Rehoboth over to the southwest. And ever since the 1970s, this specific geographical pocket has absolutely captured the public's imagination as this massive hotspot for the bizarre. But listen, we need to set the record straight real quick because a lot of internet lore gets the actual geography completely wrong. For example, the legendary Hockomock Swamp, the one often called the Devil's Swamp, doesn't actually cover the whole triangle. It's just confined to a few towns. And the Freetown Fall River State Forest, which is another huge hotspot for these legends, is absolutely nowhere near the swamp. Even key historical sites like Grassy Island and Anawan Rock are frequently misplaced by internet ghost hunters. Understanding the real lay of the land is definitely the first step to unpacking the whole myth. But even with all that geographical confusion, this myth is completely baked into the local culture. We're talking mainstream local media, like the Taunton Gazette, frequently reporting on the triangle. They've cited everything from gigantic snakes and low-flying UFOs to creatures leaving behind 18-inch footprints. So this isn't just some fringe internet theory, right? It's a massive cultural staple of southeastern Massachusetts. Moving right along to Section 2, Cryptids of the Bay State. And wow, these bizarre sightings go back way further than you might think. Way back in 1817, sailors off Cape Ann reported seeing a 60-foot sea serpent with eyes the size of pewter plates. Then, jump to 1938 in Provincetown, and you've got the Black Flash, this 8-foot-tall acrobatic humanoid with glowing eyes and silver ears that literally laughed at police before vaulting over 10-foot fences. Wild, right? By the 1970s, you have reports of massive, hairy beasts in the Hockomock Swamp, supposedly lifting the back ends of police patrol cars. And of course, you can't forget 1977, when 3 totally different groups of teenagers spotted the Dover Demon, a stick-thin creature with peach-colored skin, glowing orange eyes, and a head shaped like a watermelon. Okay, things take a much darker turn here in Section 3, True Crime and Satanic Panics. Between 1979 and 1980, the town of Fall River was absolutely rocked by a series of tragic and brutal murders. Young women, including 17-year-old Doreen Levesque and 20-year-old Karen Marston, were found dead under just horrific circumstances in areas like the Freetown State Forest. Now, these weren't the work of swamp monsters. These were incredibly real human tragedies that completely shattered a community. And this all went down right in the middle of the nationwide satanic panic, this wild, fast-spreading fear that basically hijacked the minds of everyone in America and brought intense fear into small towns. In Fall River, a local pimp named Carl Drew leaned right into this hysteria. He declared himself the leader of a satanic cult and fueled all these wild rumors of human sacrifice. Now, while some people initially claimed these murders were part of elaborate rituals deep in the woods, later confessions showed that the satanic elements were totally fabricated, just made up to cover up the gruesome reality of the crimes. So the paranormal legends of the forest essentially became a super convenient smokescreen for real human evil. Which brings us to Section 4, the real history of colonial war. When you dig into the historical research about King Philip's War, you uncover a truly devastating conflict. From 1675 to 1676, this armed conflict between Native American tribes and the United Colonies of New England raged across this exact same region. Dozens of frontier towns were just burned to the ground. In fact, if you look at the casualties relative to the population back then, it's often called the deadliest conflict in American history. We're talking about profound colonial and generational trauma, devastating disease, and an absolutely brutal fight for survival. But today, there is some incredible work happening to properly preserve this history. We're seeing modern partnerships form between the National Park Service's American Battlefield Protection Program and various indigenous tribes, including the Wampanoag and Nipmuc nations. They're actively working together to uncover and protect the true stories of these battlefields. They want to make sure that the legacy of this land is defined by its actual historical gravity and not just, internet ghost stories.
Next up, Section 5, the Pukwudgie problem.
If you've spent any time looking up the Bridgewater Triangle, you've definitely heard of Pukwudgies. But here's the thing, the modern internet version, it's wildly different from the actual original folklore. Modern cryptozoology usually describes them as these solitary, gray-skinned, troll-like cryptids haunting the state forest. But if you look at traditional Wampanoag stories, Pukwudgies are magical little people who live in organized bands, kind of like human societies. Plus, folklorists point out that in Wampanoag tales, these beings and their powerful, hostile magic often functioned as a thinly veiled representation of white colonizers, serving as direct enemies to the tribe's great cultural hero, Mashop. And this right here is a crucial point. The true cultural meaning of these beings has been effectively erased. By transforming them from little people into mere creatures, it totally strips away all their cultural context. Actually, a massive turning point for this was a 1982 children's book by Jean Fritz, which just straight up depicted them as tiny trolls. The problem? Well, it was written completely without consulting tribal members, and it heavily distorted those traditional stories. Today, members of the Wampanoag tribe are quick to point out that their cultural focus is really on their hero, Mashop, not the Pukwudgies that all these amateur ghost hunters are out there trying to find. And that brings us to our final part, Section 6, Myths, Land, and Memory.
Writer Stephen Gencarella highlights a really profound irony here. He says, "One wonders what to think of contemporary white men telling tales about Pukwudgies who lurk in an area of land purportedly cursed by indigenous people because whites seized something that did not belong to them." I mean, think about it. You've got modern paranormal enthusiasts wandering through these forests, searching for appropriated versions of indigenous myths, right on top of land that is deeply scarred by the actual, very real historical trauma of colonization.
It really completely reframes how we look at these local legends, doesn't it? The monsters people are looking for in the woods might just be reflections of the very real anxieties, tragedies, and historical conflicts that shaped this entire region. So, I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. Whose history are you really consuming when you read a ghost story? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the legends around you.